Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? I've got a really cool guest tonight. Now, usually the people that I have on are just so smart, but this dude, we're friends on Twitter, and he is so bright with the things that he posts and talks about. It's unbelievable. It's my friend Josh, and he's coming in from South America, and we're gonna talk Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. You guys know that when I talk about Jesus is the sun. It's an astrotheological, anthropomorphic allegory going through the hero's journey of the sun going through the 12 zodiac signs. We're going to understand Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, where this comes from originally. Then we're going to start going into, if we have time, Jungian archetypes. So let me bring him on. Hey, brother.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, man. All right, so we got stable connections. So let's just jump right into it. So I always talk about Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And a lot of people are like, yeah, they're kind of familiar with it, but they don't know who Joseph Campbell was. They don't know his explanation of the hero's journey. It's just kind of like a sound bite. Let's really dive into it. So what was your exposure to it? What were you taught, and what have you basically figured out? Can we get into that?
Okay, yeah, sure. I was down in Huntington Beach where I went to high school, and I ended up going to community college there. And my first class was calculus. It was super hard, and I was like, you know what? I want an easy class. So the next semester, I ended up taking the easy classes, and I thought mythology would be easy. I was just thinking that sounds easy and interesting, and it ended up being the most significant class of my life. It was all Joseph Campbell. So I'm no expert or anything, but I'm just kind of like a fan, a hobbyist. But yeah, Joseph Campbell introduced me to the archetypes. So, and the hero's journey is like, I have slides. I wasn't sure what the format of this conversation would be, but I get into the different books that Joseph Campbell wrote. I really recommend just watching his lectures. To kind of show the different kind of forms that the archetypes come into, like the different masks of God and all this other stuff. So the hero's journey is like, he wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, I believe it's called. And it's like, it just kind of goes into how like every hero's story is kind of very similar. It's the same story. It shows the path of the hero, and these basically, like, it's like a pattern that is reoccurring throughout all these myths is what he found the pattern for that. So, well, I can't say that he found the pattern, but he like maybe rediscovered the pattern and rearticulated it, because this is all ancient common sense. There was the like in the Nag Hammadi library, you have the Archon, the hypostatic beings that they say are like farming humans or whatever. But what I interpret that as like the archangels, the archetypes themselves are these interdimensional beings, kind of like with lives of their own. Mm-hmm. So the hero's journey, it's that is one aspect of these hypostatic archons.
Okay.
And Jesus, yeah, I just got done watching Uber Boyo and Adam Green have a really great discussion about some things. It's thought provoking, but
from oh God, what is Adam? I know Adam. It's his I forget the name of his show. What was the name of his show? What's the name of his show?
No More News. He just gets really critical of all this religious stuff in a whole different way than what you're doing. I really like your research because it really dovetails into my research. But my research is kind of on a different, it dovetails. It's not quite the same, but it definitely complements each other. Mm-hmm. But I'm not writing 9 books. I think you've written 9 books.
Yeah,
that's incredible, man. And that's kudos for that. That's a lot of work. But yeah, I'm just kind of like a hobbyist. Like I said, I study a lot of different things. Right now, I'm really getting into computer programming, so I'm like fully involved. Mm-hmm. But But let's get back to this hero's journey. Like I want to discuss things that are going to help your I haven't been tuning in lately. I've been really busy coding a bunch of stuff, but as Jesus as the Son, well, do we have can we get into the slides?
Let's do that because I feel like you're more comfortable. So Jesus' hero's journey is you have the virgin birth, you have the rise, you have the glory, you have the betrayal, you have the death, and then the resurrection. Is that a common theme throughout? I mean, I know it is, but I would like you to speak on that some. So let me add this real quick. All right, so here's what we have. We have it on now, so take it away.
Okay, well, I just threw this together. I didn't really know what we were going to be talking about, so I was just like, okay, you want to talk about Joseph Campbell and Carl Jung and the archetypes? That's a great conversation topic. So I just threw these together. As far as Jesus with the virgin birth, just all of the kind of events that happened through Jesus's life, and as you've broken it down as a astrological allegory, it is that, and it is more than that too. I believe.
Of course, I tell people that the Bible is 10 holy sciences. I only teach one. I never said I have all the answers, but I said I have a lot of the. This is the oldest science, astrology, and it's the most prevalent.
Yeah.
So go on.
Okay, so let's see, because I kind of have an intimate relationship with the Archon. Just since I've been studying this stuff so long, I've been really looking at it. So I put together this little thought process of slides. So I'll just kind of go through it. Here we have the archangels and the kind of a picture of the Archon. In the old world, the Christians were considered atheists because they didn't believe in the 12 Archon, the Olympiads or whatever, the Zeus and Hera and all those, the 12 demigods or whatever. That was reality as far as deity went. And then this new Christian stuff is like, these guys are atheists. They don't believe in God. Right. And then, of course, that's changed a lot since then. But this was the reality.
Before you jump into it, that picture, go back up a sec.
Yeah.
Looking at this picture right here, and you know what it reminds me of? If you go to Washington, and I forget what building it is, this looks a lot like the apotheosis of George Washington.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it's related in some way. I mean, it's all like they've kind of encoded the old world into the Bible. Like you're really focused on the zodiac, and it seems like the zodiac is really the science of the personalities of these archetypes. I've expanded
it a little bit too. I'm sure you've seen. I also include some of Ptolemy's 148 constellations from 150 AD because that's still in the same time frame. I use about 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah. It's very archetypal. That's why there's like chimeras everywhere and these kind of like otherworldly entities. Yeah, we're going to go through. I mean, I have 36 slides I just threw together to kind of be a good visual because this to me that symbolizes like kind of the sky, what we're talking about, the celestial events personified as these characters.
Before you jump into this, can you define the word archon? How you're going to speak on it?
Sure. Well, Archon comes from the Nag Hammadi library as the hypostatic beings, and I actually have an excerpt from that in these slides. Mm-hmm. And I don't really hear other people's combining Archon with Archangel and archetypes. But the more you look at it, to me, the more apparent that it is the same thing. The archangels, the 7 archangels, the Elohim. Okay, that's the 7 planets.
Yes,
that's the seven ruling planets.
Correct.
So that's those are the archangels, and there might be more than the 7, but and then. The archetypes, yeah, sure. There's 12 archetypes that Jung goes into, Campbell goes into, but there's more than 12 archetypes. Archetypes just means like a pattern.
Right.
So what would the archon be? It's hypostatic beings that are like interdimensional, and you can't see them with your eyes, but you can see them through the patterns, if that makes some sort of sense. Like you can, they're like mathematical archetypes. And Tesla, I guess, wrote a letter to the Red Cross saying that he had an extraterrestrial encounter. And I wanted to get into that because I think that what he was talking about was these beings, because they're patterns, they're pattern beings that that comes up. But so the archon actually, and then if you look into the Nag Hammadi library, which is like kind of like the source for, I guess, what people think of as Gnosticism.
Yes, Gnostic text, correct.
Yeah, Gnostic texts, but
one of the major ones would be Enoch, and I believe that goes into it too, right?
Enoch. I know Enoch had a calendar. So yeah, a lot of this stuff is calendaric. So the calendar, I mean, it's what happened was we used to have this connection with the sky. Like we didn't have clocks and stuff like that, but our calendar was the most important thing. You've talked about the Bible as an almanac. Exactly.
Farmer's Almanac, correct.
Farmer's Almanac, exactly. So what it has been in the past is like, that was the most important thing. The savior of mankind was the calibration of the calendar. So you knew when to plant your crops as a civilization. Without that knowledge, to have that perfect calendar that's on point. Because what happens is you have calendrical drift or whatever. So you need that calibration or now they call it celebration, calibration. I think that it's related personally. It might be a stretch for some, but it's just these holidays, they land on certain events for the calendar. We've lost contact with this direct observation of the celestial.
It's funny, Josh, just to jump in real quick. You have the solstices and the equinox that form the cross through the zodiac, right? But at the midpoint, the 4 points between all of them are major holidays that people have no idea.
Yeah. And if you really look at, like, all these saints' days and stuff, they actually do have older significance as kind of like these Farmer's Almanac kind of significant days for what to do. And then you have these holidays, and it just keeps people in like a rhythm, and it keeps your civilization from falling apart because you get this calendrical drift. If you think there's 360 days in a year, 10 years later, your calendar's all wonky. So then the civilization that doesn't have that wonkiness beats you because they actually have the crops to feed their soldiers or whatever.
You know where the extra 5 days comes from, though, mythologically?
What?
You have the 12 signs at the 12 signs, 30 days. It's 360. You know where the extra 5 days come from? It's a mythology story. It's
with Thoth. Yeah,
Thoth, correct. He gambled with the moon for 1/72 of her light, and he won. I think it was a game of cards, or it was the tarot. I forget.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's Enoch. I think was it Enoch that? So there you have in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you have 2 calendars that come up. That's the Enochian calendar and the Zadok calendar. See, for the longest time, we've had solar calendars and lunar calendars. So
the Jews still use the lunar calendar.
Yeah, it's to a point, but I think, well, they use both. They have a lunar solar calendar, but what is a month? We think of a month as like 30 days, or whatever. But a month is actually originally a moon. A month.
A month, correct.
So the first day of the month was the day of the new moon. And then the Sabbath was a half moon. And then the next Sabbath was a full moon. And then the next Sabbath was the other half moon. And then the next Sabbath was another new moon. So there's a whole section, there's a whole study on the lunar Sabbath. And it's an interesting study for sure.
You're talking 4 weeks right there. That's 28 days, 13 months. That's the moon cycles, and then that leaves 1 day for rest. That's where
there's 353 days in a lunar year, which is 12 cycles. And then there's 365 days in a solar year, give or take. And then there's a 12-day difference, and that's where we get like the 12 days of Christmas, this calibration period. I think that's my take on it. I don't hear other people really talking about this stuff, but it goes all the way back to Akitu in Sumeria. The 12 days of Akitu, I believe, went into Saturnalia and then went into the 12 days of Christmas. It just long period. We kind of lost our contexts, there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about on all this stuff, but we'll just briefly skim over that stuff. But let's see so the Jews did have a lunar calendar, but that was like the spiritual calendar. It's kind of like the most direct observation. But I think it was the Greeks who like outlawed the lunar calendar or something like that. I don't know enough about it to speak on it, but something like that happened. And now today we have the Gregorian calendar. We went like 45 BC or whatever, Julian calendar came up, and then we moved to the Gregorian. But now we don't look at the sky. We don't have like the bright and morning star. People say that's Venus.
Lucifer.
And yeah, well, it's so much more than that. I think so. Because back in the day, the heliacal rise of the stars for the Egyptians and the Sumerians, that was the star sign. And that was like the star that rose before the sun came up. The first time you would see that, that was the morning star. Mm-hmm. So Venus might be a morning star, but there was many morning stars. The morning stars were like kind of like their clock. The Egyptians didn't have watches. They would just look at the sky and know what time it was.
We don't look at the sky anymore. We can't because we have all this industrial pollution now.
Yeah, definitely. We're disconnected in a lot of ways, but I'm just, the ancient imagination was way more connected with the celestial events and stuff. And just how everything moved through the year and stuff. But I go through a lot of this material. I was trying to do it in a way that made good sense.
I appreciate you putting this together, by the way. I was just thinking we were just going to have a conversation. This is wonderful.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I see that you do a lot of great presentations, and you like to use the slides and stuff. So I was just thinking, I should just do that too. It helps. It just helps convey the information in
Some people are visual learners,
Yeah, totally, and it helps steer the conversation. But we have the archetypes, the 12 archetypes. There's many more, like I said, archetypes. Archetype just means pattern, but there's we have the 12 months, the 12 hours, and then we have the 12 zodiac. We kind of divide
the 12 chakras, the 12 knights of the round table. It goes on.
Exactly. Yeah. 12 disciples, everything. Yeah. But here we have Zeus, Hera, and the other 12 Olympians. Mm-hmm. And that was the reality back then. That was the predominant religion. Here we have so Tesla, his 369 and his mathematical archetypes. I didn't really get into this too much to fact check myself, but there is something there where I believe that he was looking through the patterns and seeing this stuff. And then you have modern Marco Rodin mathematics, vortex-based mathematics with the 369.
Can you explain the 369 to people? Because nobody has any clue when he said that the key to the universe is, or one of the keys to the universe is 369. Some people have
Tesla.
Yeah. What is your understanding of it?
I'm not sure. I can't pretend to know exactly, okay. but there, if you look at this, the pulse of vortex mathematics, if you look, I don't know if you can see this, but there's the 3, 6,
there's
9.
The 6 on the left and the 9. Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah. So how this kind of goes around in the, I would just recommend really studying Marco Rodin and check out the Rodin coil. It's the toroid torque fields and stuff like that. It's
similar to a Tesla coil.
Kind of similar, but the rodent coil is a whole different creature, man. Like it's pretty cool.
Okay.
It's just a toroid that they create out of wires, and it creates this massive like beam of magnetism. But let's see, to explain the 369, I think that you could almost go into how Judaism looks at gematria, and you kind of combine, if you have 21, you kind of add 2 to 1 and get the 3. So like every number goes from 1 to 9. Now, can I explain it? Can I explain Tesla's genius? No, I can't pretend. I can't pretend to. I just kind of observe it and with my mouth open, you know. But I just wanted to go through that because he basically describes talking to the archon, or not talking to them, but getting a message from the mathematical archetypes. And I just thought that was significant for the discussion, or just to skim over it. I didn't really prepare enough to. I don't know, but have you ever gotten into the tetramorph?
I talk about the tetramorph. The tetramorph, if you look at for example, Ezekiel, I forget what I think it's 32. No, it's not 32:30. I forget what it is. I think it's 32:30. Ezekiel 32:30.
Yeah,
I might be wrong with that, but basically, it's Ezekiel's vision of God, and the tetramorph is the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac.
Exactly.
The Aquarius. You have the Aquarius. You have Taurus. You have Leo, and then you have the Eagle, which I explain is the ascendant of Scorpio, or it's the higher form. And for people who want to understand how the eagle connects to scorpion, the scorpion is a belly-crawling creature. It's the lowest form of life on earth. In fact, if you read the Bible and you read Genesis, the story of Adam and Eve, the first thing God does to the snake after the deception is take his legs away, makes him slither on his belly. It's a punishment. In Mexico, and I don't know like where you're located too, do they have Santo de la Muerte where the men dress up in suits and they crawl on their bellies to church?
No, I don't think so. I think we're pretty far south.
Okay, it's the same thing. It's crawling on your belly. It's a punishment. But the eagle is the highest flying form of life on earth. It's the evolved form. It's the ascendant. Yeah. So you have those 4 fixed signs. They make a cross through the zodiac. And if you read Revelation 4:7, the 4-headed animal is that. And that's the same thing as Ezekiel's vision of God.
Cool. Exactly. And then we also have, well, if you look at the historians through time, they attributed the tetramorph, the lion, ox, eagle, and man, they attributed that to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which I found interesting. So all the historians kind of have a different version. If you look at the Wikipedia, it has like a list of all what the historians assigned Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John to. But I thought that was a very good representation of archetypes.
Right. I'm looking at it right now. That's Ezekiel's vision right there. The image is backwards, though. It's mirrored. But Ezekiel should be on the left. But the tetramorph is literally to his left. That's the 4-headed animal. If you were to zoom into it, you'll see the 4 different heads. Yeah,
and I guess just for the sake of the discussion, just for anybody who's taking notes about this stuff, there's another tetramorph in the Bible, and that's Daniel's tetramorph. And that one, I just noticed the Kardashians were, whenever they had the heads, they were wearing the fur coats with the heads. I just noticed, hey, that's Daniel's. Well, first I thought, hey, is that Ezekiel's tetramorph? But I was like, no, that's actually Daniel's tetramorph, which kind of signifies a jubilee year, which is
the jubilee. By the way, guys, I've talked about the significance of 49. A jubilee is 49 years.
Yeah, has to do with Sirius, the pulse of Sirius A and Sirius B every 50 years, 49 years, 50 years, it pulses. And interesting. But so the tetramorph, you covered it, man. Exactly. How Ezekiel was digesting and I guess beholding the cosmos from Earth and seeing the 4 cardinal directions. And then you have like in the spring, you got Leo come up, and it also signifies the 4 seasons. You have Leo coming up in the spring, Taurus coming up.
Leo in the summer.
Leo, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
The reason they're
or
called fixed signs is because they're fixed in the season. You have 3 different signs. You have the cardinal, that's the first sign in the season. Then the fixed, that's the dead of the season. And then you have the mutable, the water sign that takes you out of the season.
yeah. You got that down. I guess I interpreted it my own way because I just think of when they first enter the sky at about 9 o'clock at night or whatever. I was just thinking, okay, that seems like I mapped my own stuff without really getting second opinions, and definitely my maps are off of a lot of consensus. But yeah, exactly. So each season has its own kind of star of the show with a night sky, and that's Ezekiel's kind of just like encapsulating that whole year or that whole calendar into this vision. That's why all this stuff dovetails into your research so well.
Then you gotta go back up a sec.
Yeah.
You have God and the sun because the sun was worshipped as God. And then I believe to the left of the tetramorph, that's actually the zodiac. Some people will argue, say that's an angel with all those eyes. It's not. It's the zodiac. But I just wanted to throw that in there. But go on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the zodiac is a big part of it. All of it. Yeah. I just put Ezekiel. I guess it's Ezekiel 1, where it just talks about the 4 living creatures, and it just you already covered that though, so we'll just skip over that. But then you go back in time to the Sumerians, and they have the same thing, and that's Lamassu, this ox, eagle, lion, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, the Sumerians are the building block for everything that we are looking at, and that's why I'm looking at the old star charts. I think you'll be interested in the old, the Mulla pin. I'm looking at some old stuff that's shaking my world a little bit. I'm not going to get into that now though, but because I'm doing like an astronomy game, and I wanted to like really get into the nitty gritty of the oldest star stuff that we have. So, but I'm not going to get into that now. We're talking about the Archon and the archetypes. But so Joseph Campbell came, and he was kind of like the really easy to understand first teacher of mythology and archetypes, and how like these patterns reemerge. You have the hero with 1,000 faces. We're talking about the hero's journey. That's basically what he's talking about. In going from Gilgamesh, he loves to talk about Gilgamesh, which is like kind of like a precursor to the Bible. You have Uthashmantim or whatever his name is, as like the pre-Noah character. The Noah.
I mean, it comes complete even with the what is was it a raven or the bird that brings back the branch to show that the water is receded?
Yeah.
They talk
it's
about
all the
goddess,
same. Yeah.
Gilgamesh wouldn't sleep with her. She sent the bull of heaven. What's the bull of heaven?
Yeah. Fully. Yeah. It's all a reoccurring story.
It's the same story.
It's the same story, yeah. And in a way, they're just the archetypes are speaking through the story. And for some reason, the archetypes are the most conducive pattern. So they're just replaying it over and over again, I guess. But yeah, but Joseph Campbell's great. I just kind of like, if anybody wants to pause the screen or look at the different books that he's written, The Power of Myth is kind of like, it's just so incredible. He just goes through so many myths and just shows how they're similar. It's kind of like comparative mythology. The hero with 1,000 faces kind of sticks to the hero archetype, which is kind of like, in our modern day, I think it's our favorite archetype with all the Marvel stuff. You got the superhero archetype now. But what happened with me and how I got into I just made this really quick illustration because like I'm like,
I love this.
Yeah, I mean, I get angry, man. I got really, really angry. I'm just like, society is run by idiots.
It is.
And there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm just like stuck here. And I just kind of like went Super Saiyan and my blood was boiling. But then, on the other side, I have this angel that's like, but there's so much beauty to appreciate though. And so here I am, like, I felt like I had Jesus inside of my head. I've never told anybody this story, but I felt like I just had like this holy angel inside my head, like the holiest part of myself with a demon with a gun, like holding it hostage or something. And I'm just thinking, like, gosh, man, like, I don't even know how to handle this. And this is probably like 4 or 5 years ago. And I just realized, like, or no, this is COVID. Whenever all the COVID stuff started rolling out, I'm just like, oh my God, what do I even do? There's nothing I can do. Like, people are just criticizing me for bringing up anything like that makes sense to me. So I realized, like, I think I might need therapy to just deal with all this anger that I was having, because I actually had a lot of anger. I had like an anger issue about it. And I was just like, I just had to retreat and go into my own space. And I became kind of like a recluse, kind of oddly, but it was good for me. It was definitely good for me to read all these books and stuff and do these things I needed to do. But I was like, I need therapy. That's whenever I started looking at Carl Jung really carefully, like, okay, he's like the father of psychology. And then that's whenever I started looking at shadow work, and I was like, is that what this is like dealing with this, like, this side of myself and the side of humanity that's just like the shadow of humanity, and that's what it is the Jungian shadow work. But what kept coming up is the red book here. Okay. I've ended up reading a lot of these, but the red book was the ultimate red pill, is what I would call it. And it's really hard to read. And it gets into different archetypes. Like, we're talking about like the anima and the animus, which is kind of like the anima is the female soul inside the masculine. And then it's kind of complex. We don't need to get too far into that.
Is it
and
like
then
left brain, right brain in a sense?
Yeah, probably similar. The anima, I just picture the anima as like whenever you're like a teenager, you're like thinking about girls. It's like your inner soul, man. Like, you're just like, oh man, she's out there somewhere. Or Jung describes the animus as a woman's inner voice is actually the voice of her father, which is a masculine voice. So, and if she didn't have a father figure, Jung says that it's the voice of the collective kind of common sense of the father or something like that. So that's a way to understand the anima and the animus, and together they form what's called the syzygy, which is like the power couple. And if you look up what the definition of syzygy is, it's when planets align. So whenever the moon is like eclipsing the sun or something like that, that's a syzygy. So it's kind of cool visuals. But the red book, man, I started reading it and I just felt like he has conversations with the devil. He pulls you into these portals and you don't know that he's talking to the biblical God. Jung gave me the red pill into Gnosticism. It wasn't the Nag Hammadi library. It was this book. It was looking at the shadow of humanity. And the visuals in the book are so much like Tolkien. And I found out Tolkien also has a red book, which I was just like, well, that's crazy. Maybe they're in the same, like.
I think Tolkien and C.S. Lewis used to talk. I think Tolkien was a Christian, wasn't he?
He could have been.
I think he was a Christian. Yeah, him and C.S. Lewis used to talk all the time.
Yeah.
Their stuff came around the same time.
Esoteric Christianity is interesting, man. It's
I have the best conversations with Christian mystics, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of Gnostics that see Jesus as the cosmic being that is the all. They don't see it as like this literal dude that's like you're gonna see like that, but it's this higher dimensional being, and I can't argue with that. Okay, like if that's what you want to say. I mean, I see a lot of the political kind of manipulations of the scriptures and stuff like that, and I'm kind of hesitant to get too far into it, but I agree. I agree that Christian mystics are are great. I mean, it's all encoded. It's the old world encoded to this new kind of project that everybody agreed on to kind of tackle immorality. But okay, so Abraxas. Also, this is my introduction to Abraxas, was the Red Book. And Carl Jung in the Red Book, like there's a knight, there's a red knight that you can, first it's just this little red dot. And it slowly, it's a red horse and a red knight in a full red armor, and slowly trotting, and he's like thinking, oh, I know who that is. Oh no, I know who that is.
You know what this reminds me of? You should totally, with your understanding now, if you haven't done already, or if you didn't do it in school, read the Canterbury Tales again.
Okay.
It was Chaucer from the 1300s. There's a reason it's still around.
Okay. What about the Canterbury
The idea
Tales?
Everyone tells their own hero's journey, and one of them, I believe, is a red knight, or a knight at least.
Yeah, well, it was Jung's conversation with the archetypal Satan or whatever. It was He slowly comes up, and then they have this brilliant conversation. That's, I mean, I don't want to call, I'm not into Satan at all, but whenever you start to see that the God of the Bible, the enigma or the ambiguousness of the God of the Bible, and then Satan, there's like this tricky little trick in there. Like if you look at, I don't know, the God of the Bible, the Gnostics were really clever at you look at the Secret Book of John or the Pistis Sophia, these other Gnostic texts that are very old, about how the God of the Bible is an intentional imposter to see if anybody will notice, which I just think is like the most brilliant plot twist that just blows my mind, to think like, wow, could that be? And then you really start to reread the Bible and all the morality and what they're really doing. And it's just like, whoa, this is just blows my mind. But I won't get into that too much, but Abraxas itself as the mega archon is what Jung kind of brought me into in the Red Book. And it's this chicken-headed god that they found like hundreds, probably thousands of old coins in the old world, because this was like, to me, it's kind of like a satire on the imposter of the effable God, because God is kind of like an ineffable thing. So they another word for Abraxas is arrogance, or another word for Abraxas is cockiness. So
the abracadabra right there, I believe the root. I believe abracadabra, the actual translation is "I will speak into existence."
Yeah. It gets into the magic that like people don't look at the Bible like it's an old grimoire, but if you look at the roots of where it comes from, that's what some people use it as, and that's possibly who wrote it. The people using it as a grimoire, which is, it's just a whole different way of looking at things. Like the 6th and 7th books of Moses, the Keys of Solomon. You get into Agrippa, you get into planetary magic, right, like in Agrippa and John Dee and stuff like that. And they're biblical. The Enochian magic. It's all about this stuff. It's all about the planets and the astrology of the Bible. So seems to be what the root was originally, and now we have this new culture that kind of, I don't want to say they've lost the context, but it seems like they have.
It's worse than that, because the religions demonize astrology.
Yeah. Exactly. Whenever that's what it all really was based on, is to give you a better connection with the cosmos that you're looking up at the sky. Here's just a couple of these coins that they find. They're like artifacts from. They just dig them up, and there's Yaldabaoth, and Abraxas, and it's just these Gnostic characters, kind of the mega archon. So like the ultimate pattern of all of this stuff. It's really an interesting study. But yeah, I won't get too far into that, but definitely. But then I had to think about this DMT. I read the spirit molecule, and people have all these encounters with these beings. They draw the beings that they're encountering in these higher dimensions, and I always thought is that the Archon? That's kind of what led me.
Notice how all of them are in sort of harmonic patterns.
Exactly. Yeah. There's something. It's like we're in the fourth dimension or third dimension or whatever, and they seem to live in a higher dimension, but they're not made of our material.
Correct.
They're made of patterns, harmonic patterns, exactly. And then I'm just thinking, did Tesla just basically have some sort of
like a spontaneous Kundalini experience? And
yeah, that's. I mean, here's his letter to the American.
He didn't drink. He didn't fornicate. He died a virgin, and he spent all his time working. I mean, to function.
Prime candidate for Kundalini.
Right.
I couldn't read the letter, but here's his letter to the American Red Cross announcing he had received an extraterrestrial message.
Okay.
and I just thought that must be what happened. I don't know, but then you get into chess, and these archons, the archetypes, the archangels, they have lives of their own, and they're the patterns. And so, and here's a little bit about the hypostasis of the archons from the Nag Hammadi library.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to read but there's Yaldabaoth. But if you think outside of this dimension and what we can see into the patterns also, so chess and playing cards both come from the same root, and that's bellomancy. So people a long time ago, they used to shoot arrows to kind of divine. It was arrow divination. And then the arrowheads, or the arrows themselves, over time, they became cards, but they also became like chaturanga, chess pieces. Chaturanga was like Indian. I just read a whole bunch about this. And
is that why Sagittarius has a bow and arrow?
I mean, probably, man. The arrow. We went through long periods where arrows were the deciding factor on a war won or a war lost. You know, so the swords would just get taken out. So the Paleolithic age and the arrowheads and hunting, arrows were very important to us for thousands of years. So Sagittarius, being the archers, it almost has to be. The archer has to be represented somewhere, and Sagittarius is I guess the perfect place for it. And I can't say for sure, but
in the hero's journey of the zodiac, Sagittarius is the bow and arrow. The bow and the arrow shoots the sun, killing it, because the last day of Sagittarius is the winter solstice, the day the sun dies. So it makes total sense.
Yeah. Well, you have like spades was once the swords. Mm-hmm. Diamonds was one. I mean, it all comes from tarot. Tarot comes from bellomancy. If you look, it comes from like China and Chinese. I don't know how that ties into Sagittarius per se, but these patterns: king, queen, jack. I just couldn't help but notice, like, this is the Archon right here, kind of expressing itself over generations and generations. There's these patterns that kind of are emerging. The zodiac itself, the zodiac is the 12, and then the 7 ruling planets is the 7. We have like the 7 days of the week, the 7 archangels, the 7 deadly sins, the 7s, and then the 12.
Mm-hmm.
So it just seems to be the 2 main harmonics for the Archon. And the 7 notes in the scale: do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. The 7 colors in a rainbow. We're talking about the 7 harmonics.
7 chakras.
7 chakras, the 12 chakras,
Right.
So, and then in a chromatic scale, you have 12. Well, that's how we divide it anyway. You can probably divide it any way you wanted, but we divide it as 12 chromatic with the 7 tonal. So, I mean, that's how we do it. And of course, different cultures do it differently, but here you have the 7 archangels, the Elohim. If you read into I think it's the Secret Book of John, or it might be the Pistis Sophia, but they talk about the Elohim as the 7 archangels, the 7 ruling planets. So these, basically the 7 harmonic that rules us, and they manifest themselves as the planets that we see in the macrocosm. And then you have here's the Elohim.
Well, there's the Kabbalah tree of life.
Yeah, and then of course I didn't really have a huge significance on this picture. I just thought that looks close enough, and it says Elohim just to kind of drive it home.
The top is a hey, and then that's an aleph, so that's ha, that's the. And then right under it, on the right, you see a shin and then a mem, Shem. Shem is name in Hebrew. And then under it, it's Yeshua, which is there. And then you have Elohim, right? So it's all there. It's all there, basically.
Yeah. I just thought it was great visual. You got the sun in the middle with the 6 planets together. It's the 7 Elohim right there. Mm-hmm. And then here, this image didn't show up very big, but you just have the 7 ruling planets of the old world. And you get into all of the old planetary magic in Agrippa or John D. Right. That's who they're talking to. So you
notice, guys, all y'all watching, that little picture right there, the 7 planets. Notice that 2 of the planets are considered part of the Elohim. Notice 2 of the planets are the sun and the moon. They consider those planets at the time.
Yeah, it wasn't Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto. That was not on the radar. Yeah, but all these other ones, they have personalities, like, so, and they have color schemes. So if you were to do like a planetary magic, you could look into some like old Hebrew planetary magic. Like you light a candle, you find the incense that planet likes. So like they say, I mean, if you read Agrippa, they have charts and stuff, and like the sun might like citrus, so you might burn some citrus incense or something and light a yellow candle, and then you might use the old names for the sun. I think it's oak. I don't actually do this. I just read about it. I'm not really a practitioner. I'm just curious about the context, because I just want to know what we're living in. So I'm not a magician. I don't do that. I just read about it a lot. But if somebody wants to try it, I'm kind of curious. I'm curious about the science of it. Like the Greco-Egyptian papyri, like Dr. Stephen Skinner, I've talked to him a little bit. He's brilliant, and it's more of like a science. Like in Egypt, it came from, they don't know why it works, but some of these things just work because it's like trial and error. And magic is the father of science. Magic is the father of religion. Magic is the common ancestor. And it sounds, a lot of people are thinking like Oh yeah, right. You believe in magic. How stupid. Magic's not real. But it's not that
Every single
it's
thing that I talk about on my channel is magic. It's it's this is our reality. It is so wild what they're keeping from us. Like, I totally understand your anger at just seeing how dumb everybody is. And they're dumb because they don't know to look for new things. They're just fed something. They believe that people have their best interest in mind. And the people that are really running things at the top like to keep you in your lower chakras and keep all this magic from us.
Yes, it gets frustrating, but I don't know. It does seem like a simulation in some weird way. Like we were born and we have like Atari, Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64. Now we have all crazy VR. To me, that's like a little sign to us that yes, we are somehow related to this simulation. And I think that this is a game.
The simulation within a simulation.
It's a simulation.
Like when you're playing The Sims and you're making them do things.
Yes, exactly. It seems like, especially with the latest stuff, it's like they're getting closer and closer to really replicating some really like you cannot distinguish between real and CGI anymore.
I mean, half the only fangirls right now are AI, and guys are controlling them.
Wow. Yeah. Well, to me, it's just like a sign that this is all a game. Our life, it's a game, and we have an impossible. It's like David and Goliath. We're David. Goliath is this massive, impossible wall that's impossible to beat, and that's the situation that we're kind of in. But we will beat it because that's what we're born for. We're born to do the impossible. For some reason, we signed up for this. We wanted to do this experience of life, and kind of go up against this impossible.
Kind of cycle, in my mind, what I find that I did, because I did a video recently where I was like, it overwhelms you when you think of what people don't know. At the same time, you want to teach everybody all this stuff, but then I cycle back between being overwhelmed and wanting to share everything. And then at times I'll sit there and I'll be like, this is just a ride. You know what I mean? This is just a ride and it's going to be over soon and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And people have near-death experiences, and it seems like there is something on the other side, and it's nothing like this. So I just always think, like, no matter what, like, I'm here to do something. And to me, it's just like, I think it's to have fun. So I think that's the point, is just to have fun. And that's probably immature to a lot of people who have to do a lot of work and not have fun. But
I mean, what's his name? Bill Hicks, the comedian, right? It's just a ride.
Yeah. It's a ride that we control, though.
Yes.
I think that we do have some say in our fate. Maybe. Well, here's a cool one. Just to go over these different archetypes, the patterns, like in this type of psychology. They hire psychologists for movie sets to help kind of like round out all of the depth psychology of the movie. So in the script, in the storylines, so you have the hero, sidekick, the maiden, the wise old man, the nurturing mother, the eternal child, the villain, the shapeshifter, the trickster. And like, whenever you're looking at all this ancient literature, I'm sure the hero is one, and it's usually the protagonist, or like the kind of like the main dude. But
you see the emergence in almost modern day society of the anti-hero now. So maybe it's still evolving and someone just needs to write about it.
Yeah. Well, whenever you're giving what is it? I think it's some occultist said like, whenever the people want a hero, we will give him a hero. And whenever
I
you're
think
given a hero,
that was Albert Pike.
Albert Pike, yeah. So whenever you're given a hero and it's like a false hero, maybe you do need an anti-hero. Maybe you do need that critic on the side that's like poking at it. Like, no, this isn't the real hero. Maybe the anti-hero is the real hero.
I forget who said it, but they said if you find yourself ever on the side of the majority, you should reevaluate yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty accurate, man. The last few years I've realized like 95% maybe of people are, I don't envy them at the level of understanding they're at. Like, it's like my girlfriend keeps saying don't call them stupid, and so I'm not going to, but
I just like to say ignorance is bliss, because it really is.
Yeah, it really is, for sure.
The weight of the world when you start to realize the truth about things. And it's not even the truth about things. So the truth comes to you and you're like, this is so interesting. But it's realizing that it's being suppressed. That's the weight of the world right there. Is that uphill battle, that constant Sisyphus with the boulder that goes up to the top and then it rolls down and you have to go back.
Yeah, it's the human condition in a way. Here's just a slide I found. Archetypes, a reoccurring pattern of images, situations, or symbols found in the mythology, religion, art, and dreams of cultures around the world. So that's whenever you're finding these little clues about the zodiac in scripture. I just thought that was really cool. I mean, I found you maybe like 6 months ago. Let's get through here. Ion. I mean, some of these, it's just so rich. Some of this stuff that they're doing. It's almost like a religion that we lost with all sorts of.
I see Isis, the archangels, and Kundalini in this picture on the right. I mean, this is unbelievably deep. This picture.
Yeah. Well, that is. I think you could call that Yaldabaoth. Well, I don't know if that's Yaldabaoth, actually. I think Yaldabaoth is actually a snake with a lion's head, or like some kind of a dragon. Also Yahweh, also supposedly. There's like an interesting video about Yahweh being a dragon. But I always thought it was kind of interesting how Jung identified as a lion-headed god, and that's the self of the cosmos, the Ion. Here is Ion, a lion-headed snake-encircled Mithraic god image of time, also called Kronos, or Deus Leon, something. Deus.
Kronos is Saturn.
Yeah.
And Saturn is Satan. I'm not going to go into that, but
yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is and he's standing on top of the world. This is unbelievable. This picture.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice. I really like how rich. I mean, Jung was really well read into all this old stuff.
If people only read Jung instead of again, what do? They elevate the morons and then they suppress the intelligent ones. Like, people don't read Jung unless you're deep into psychology or you study it on your own. What does everyone tell you in psychology? Freud, right? Freud with his ridiculous nonsense, but
Jung, he's kind of simple. Yeah, Jung is, Jung's a bit more rich. I think the whole study of Campbell and Jung are underrated. I think that a lot of people would really enjoy. It's just like food for the soul, kind of like you're just thinking about all these symbols and what the deeper meanings of things. And I mean, I don't think it's the end all or anything, but it's a nice supplementary study. Here's Jung gets into the anima a lot.
Right, you touched on this earlier.
Yeah, the feminine within the masculine, which is interesting. It's interesting that he says like the masculine's inner soul is feminine and the feminine's inner soul is masculine. And how I kind of explained that earlier, and that's how I see it anyway. It's like
Right. You could tie that in somehow, I'm sure, with the emerald, not the emerald tablets. Well, it's the same guy, but hermetics, the principle of gender, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get into the divine androgyne and that whole idea of combining the male and the female.
That's why. That's why you have Baphomet, who's male with a pair of breasts, because it's an androgynous being.
Yeah, I mean, the old Phoenician religion is really into all that, which is just really interesting because it's like modern Freemasonry and kind of claims to descend from this old religion that kind of the pinnacle was the divine androgyne. So, and then we look at society today, and it's kind of interesting how we're moving that way. I mean, I'm not planning on doing that with myself, but
you know how they took the archetype of Jesus and the magic that he represents, and they made him a literal man. That's what they did with the magic of androgyny, with the male and the female, and made it the way they're confusing it and perverting it right now.
Oh, this is from before. This should have been with the other Tetramorph stuff. But here's the different historians through time who have said, which I think this is interesting, especially for you in your work with you're breaking down the storylines astrologically. And I personally tried to kind of look at this stuff and think like, okay, I assigned to my own. So like Irenaeus said, the man in Ezekiel's vision was Matthew. And then the lion was John, the calf was Luke, the eagle was Mark. But I'm just thinking, so basically what he's saying right there is Matthew was a symbol of, I guess it was winter, if that was Aquarius.
Correct.
Or was that fall?
No, Aquarius is winter, yeah. Fall is Scorpio eagle.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at that like, okay, then this guy Irenaeus is saying John was actually an allegory for lion, which is summer or spring.
Correct, Leo, summer, yeah.
Summer, yeah, etc. So I never really thought about that until I really got into the Tetramorph. It's interesting that Daniel has his Tetramorph and then he has his whole vision, like Daniel's dream that he presents to the king of Babylon. That's kind of like, that's an interesting
too,
story.
That he gets tossed into a lion's den too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Leo is the ultimate kind of symbol of the zodiac. Right. To me, Leo is the head of Yaldabaoth, man, and the whole snake thing, that is the zodiac. Leo is the oldest one. So,
you know what's interesting about Leo when you're talking about that?
What?
The zodiac, the year, our year starts January 1st, and I've explained this countless times. That at midnight, our year.
Say that again.
Our year starts January 1st.
Oh, our year, okay. Yeah.
I'm not talking about the Ethiopians. I'm talking about most of civilized society. It's January 1st. Because at midnight on December 31st, Sirius is at its height, the highest it will ever be during the year. And then you have Earth, and then the sun is straight down. It's a perfect line. However, in the ancient times, March 21st, the equinox, the spring equinox, the Passover, the sun passing over the equator, was the original beginning of the year. But if you trace that even further back to the Egyptians, even further back, the year actually didn't begin January 1st. It actually didn't begin the spring equinox. It began in Virgo. So what happened was the sun would come to an end in Leo, the oldest, and then it would be a new sun, the light of the world, would be born of a virgin, because the new year started in Virgo, the wheat harvest.
Yeah. Interesting. So the new year was in Virgo.
That's when, when you trace it back.
We're talking about Egyptian New Year, whenever it was like, I guess that's August. Is that?
Yeah, like August, September, early kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I knew that the Egyptian New Year was, well, their star sign. We're talking about the morning star.
Mm-hmm.
Their star sign in Egypt was Sirius. Sirius was like the Egyptian star sign, and Sumerian for their New Year, which is interesting because it doesn't line up anywhere close today. So for I guess they say precession. I'm not fully subscribed to the idea of precession, but but yeah, I think equinox is a great place to start the new year. It's kind of interesting how the calendar has changed. We had 10 months, I believe, and they added
Until
June and
Julius
July.
Caesar, July, and
Yeah,
Caesar Augustus, August. Which is funny
yeah,
because when we had 10 months, right? September, October, November, December, Sept, Oct, Nov, Dec, 7, 8, 9,
yeah,
10. Everything lined up with the beginning of the year at the spring equinox.
yeah. I was looking deeply into this because I'm building a game, and it's a calendar. It's a game based on the old calendars, but so I'm looking at all these old calendar stuff, the Dead Sea Scrolls and everything. But they had, I think it was 87-day winter, and they did not even say those were days. That was like, and we're talking about the lunar calendar before. Some days they would count as 2 days, so they would like recalibrate every new moon. So like one day might actually be 2 days back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of like it's kind of complicated. But before we did this extra 2 months, June and July, I guess they had the winter. It would just go into winter, and it was just like undocumented days. It was just like, yeah, we're in winter. There was no number. We're not in any month, which is kind of crazy. But I guess June and July was just 2 months that they added. That's 60 days. I thought it was 87 days that was the winter,
Oh,
but
I can't
could be
speak
wrong.
on that. I don't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. They also had like 10-day weeks. I think they had 3
It's also
weeks.
important for people to understand is that the way that the science works and what Josh and I are talking about, all these ancient, the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, everything. This science works in the northern hemisphere because if you go into the south, everything is reversed. So this is all based on northern astrology.
Totally. Yeah, speaking of that, in the South, they have something called the Horn Star, and I have the references for this, but it gives a good example. Like today, we have the shofar, right, where the Jewish guy is blowing the ram's horn, right,
They're
on
the
the
people of
holy.
Aries, the ram.
Well, it has to do with Aries exactly because I mean the first point of Aries is whenever the sun is in equinox. So even though they say now we're in Pisces, but that was supposedly like that the ram signified the new year. So, but this comes from something older, from Africa in the south. And I have references for this. If anybody really wants it, just email me eqstudies at gmail.com. I have references from these random books that I found. But what happened was in Africa, in some place, they way long time ago, the first person to see that star, which they called the Horn Star, they would get their horn. They would get their cow. It was a cow horn. They would blow their cow horn and tell the village, "Hey, it's time for us to move our herds. I see
Well,
the
that would make
star."
sense because that's Taurus. So it goes back. So you have Aries, right? And then you have before
Yeah,
that would be Taurus. The bull,
yeah,
the cow is the female bull. This is why in India it's a sacred cow because the age that they began their civilization. Remember, India Hinduism,
Brahma,
years old. Brahma, Sarah, that's Abraham and Sarah. But it makes sense, right? The Jews with the horn, but you go back further, it would be a house horn.
The Aryans, right. The Aryan age, the Aries. But anyways, the king of the village or whatever would give you a cow as a prize if you were the one to see that star the first time and blow the horn, which I just thought that was a cool story.
It is a cool story.
To kind of like also illustrate what the real meaning of the morning star is. I think, okay, maybe it is also Venus to some cultures or something, but there's this
later times, of course, but everything has a genesis.
Yeah, exactly. There's like this really interesting backstory of the morning star. And you have Revelations 22:16. Jesus says, I am the bright and morning star. And you're just thinking like, wait a second, isn't that Lucifer?
Yep.
And that's like the last page of the Bible. He's like saying like, think twice about all this, am I the angel of light or what? Because in Corinthians it says like, and even Satan comes as an angel of light. It's just like this interesting stuff because it makes you really think about it. Like,
well, Josh, they say it in Genesis 1:3, and God said, let there be light. How is there going to be light without Lucifer, the light bringer? How is he going to bring the light? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, you have all the Freemasonic. I think that I've got 5 different quotes now, and people say, "Oh no, those Freemasons, they don't think that Lucifer is God." But you just have like 5 like very high-ranking Freemasons that have written extensive Freemasonic literature that just mention like, yes, that's definitely an aspect of like old gnosis. So whenever you put things together and hear Jesus say, behold, I am the bright morning star, even though, that could mean anything. But to me, that just means like, literally to me, that just means like, that is the old calendar calibration. That is the star. That is literally the star that tells you when the new year kicks off the 12 days of Akitu. Which became the 12 days of Christmas, which we moved it all around now. But before it was all an equinox in Sumeria, at least. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's definitely thought-provoking stuff. To think about this is like, okay, what if the God of the Bible was, the snake in the Garden of Eden? Mm-hmm. Which is crazy. But that's what Mormons say in their temples. If you go to a Mormon temple, they say, don't you know that Lucifer is the god of this world and stuff like that, if you look into it. But, to me, I'm just thinking like, you guys are messing with my mind, but it's just so many plot twists. But you look into the magical literature, Enochian magic, John Dee, the Greco-Egyptian magical papyri, which is like really deeply into this planetary magic that we're talking about with the Elohim. This is what it's all based on. The Elohim in the Bible is planetary magic. So yes. we're talking about Saturn and Satan. Satan is just Saturn. It's just a planet, and it's got a good side and a bad side. But the bad side is very, very bad. It's a huge planet. It influences a lot. So. Yeah, and it had at different eons, like way back in the day, the Saturnic, I guess, era was very, very organized. Like, look at Saturn's rings, how tight they are. But to do that, they had to have like really strict law. So that's why Saturn's associated with dungeons and like punishment. So that's hell. That's Satan. So it's definitely all very thought provoking, and I can't pretend to know what's going on, but I definitely think about it. But you look at all this magical literature: Moses as a magician, Enoch as a magician, Noah. They're all magicians. You look at Abraham. Abraham had his astrological breastplate in the Apocrypha that if people looked upon it, they would be healed. And what was it? It was the zodiac. It was represented as gemstones, wasn't it? Yeah, well, yeah, that's Aaron's priestly breastplate. Yeah,
Yeah.
the 12 gemstones, and that all comes from this what we're looking at right here. This old magical tradition that the Bible and everything seems to be based on. So yeah, these gemstones, they kind of like embody or personify the personalities of these different planets, like Venus. You think Phoenicia,
Right.
Venisa. So the Phoenicians were kind of Venetian, the Venetian arts. Whenever you're like picking up a date or romance,
Right.
Venus.
Notice that everyone has a birthstone too.
Yeah. Venus's color, I think, is green.
Yes, that's why the Muslim flag is green. It's the crescent
Yeah,
moon. That's Venus.
yeah. Venus rules Taurus and
My
Libra.
planet, Libra, or my sign. It's Taurus and
Yeah,
Libra.
yeah, interesting. And then you have Jupiter. I think Jupiter is more of a blue that they
Correct.
say in magic.
That's
So
Pisces.
Pisces and Sagittarius, yeah. And then Sun is yellow. But yeah, they all have their colors. It's almost like you're looking at the microcosm
I
of
think
the
August, which is Leo, the birthstone is peridot, which is yellow.
August.
Oh, it's Leo.
Oh yeah. Leo is solar, yeah. And then Cancer is lunar, and that's more of like I think it's violet in magic. I think this is all in old literature. Like Henry Cornelius Agrippa has it all charted out and stuff for the old stuff, and that's they have like magic recipes. Like you take a frog and you like duct tape it to your shoulder and have it there for like for some reason that will like take away your scurvy or whatever. Like
Have
a
you ever
lot
read,
of it.
have you ever read the Picatrix?
I don't think I've read all the way through it, but I've skimmed all the stuff.
They have spells in it.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious. I'm not doing spells myself, but I'm just curious about the history and the context. Like I said, the father of religion and science. Like science came from trial and error, and that came from magic. That magic is trial and error. They just try it. Maybe if I duct tape a frog to my shoulder, it'll cure the scurvy. Let's try it. And oh, lo and behold, it worked. They don't know why it works, but it works. So they record it as that's a working spell.
And then you have like alchemy. You can get into that and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly. Magic became alchemy. Alchemy became chemistry. Alchemy,
Chem is Egypt.
Chem is Egypt. Yeah, but I think that this is a lesser known link is with the same traditions going into actually what we know as modern religion. Key of Solomon. Solomon is like, wrangling demons, and what they do is they like make like a circle of salt around them before they like summon these demons.
Is this the
It's just
circle
like,
of salt in the pentagram?
I'm sure it is. Yeah, it's all related.
They show you that
Yeah.
shit in like Charmed or whatever in like The Craft or whatever magic your show they have. Which
Yeah. This they're building altars like, and Solomon. I mean, if you look into the Apocrypha, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Solomon was a commander of spirits, both good and bad. So he was like a magician.
right.
I mean, that's what technically what they call magic. It's like you're calling in spirits. You're burning like an incense you're kind of tuning into that frequency of that spirit. Like say I want to call Venus in. I'm going to find what Venus likes. Say that, or Mercury. Let's just say that we want to work on our money and our merchandise. Merchandise.
Right.
Or say that we need to make more money. We've got to summon in Mercury. The year is like, I don't know, 400 AD.
Well, remember how I told you have the solstices and the equinox to form the cross, and then in the middle of those you have holidays? It just so happens that in the middle of one of them you have Saman, or Halloween, which it evolved into. And that's between the fall and the winter at the halfway point. And it just so happens that that particular time frame was when the ancients believed that the veil between our world and the next was the thinnest, which is why they used to do all their magic at that point.
Nice. Yeah. Makes sense. You said Samat?
Saman.
Saman.
You have Halloween, yeah, it's Saman. It was the day of All Hallows Eve.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean,
Saman is pagan, by the way.
Yeah, well, it all seems to be related to what our modern culture, we're still doing everything, but just people don't know it.
And it's funny, too, because the Christians will call it the Harvest Festival.
Yeah, well, that's the sickle. Very Saturnic. Kronos has got the sickle. It is the harvest. Saturn is the harvest guy. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Almost done with these slides, and we can talk about something else. But yeah, you have Aaron's priestly breastplate. They're basically doing what we're talking about. But he's that. I mean, Abraham had something similar, but it was a stone in the Apocrypha. But just to me, it's just like that must be related, and that must be the 12 zodiacs. There's 12 emeralds or whatever corresponding to the 12 disciples. It's all allegorizing the same thing. And they're basically meditating on the all or whatever.
Right.
So trying to encompass everything in their practice. We have Osiris. He's got the ram's horns.
Mm-hmm.
Because Osiris, so in Egypt they have different aspects of the soul. So you actually have like 3 souls. One is called the Ak, AKH. One is called the Ba, and one is called the Ka, I think.
Ka,
but the Ba was like that little flying bird that you'll see in a bunch of the artwork of the deceased. That's their soul flying as like a little dude with bird wings.
You know, that evolves into modern day, where people say that when Catholics, for example, when they talk about how like a cardinal comes, and that means your dead relatives come to visit. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but that's where that comes from.
Interesting. Well, so they say it's like your essence, the Ba. Whenever I first was studying the soul of Egypt, I thought of it like, because I was first looking at Aries and the goat of Mendes. And I know that's a goat, not a ram, but I think that they are the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
They based their cities off of stars actually. So you would actually like have a city, and that would be based on some place in the sky. And so Mendes was based on Aries. So and then the next door was Pisces. And so you look at like Starbucks, that symbol for Starbucks with the fishtails, that's Hatmehit. And that's so I guess I got to give the backstory of this Osiris stuff. Is that Osiris, here's the goat of Mendes, Baphomet or whatever. That's Osiris. Mm-hmm. Osiris comes as Benebjedet. So Benebjedet's girlfriend, he's like a water ram. This is the oldest god, or probably one of the oldest gods of Egypt. Mm-hmm. Really cool temples. But this is Osiris. This is the Ba. Oh yeah, we're talking about the Ba. So this is actually the Ba of Osiris. Mm-hmm. So that little bird, this is like Osiris's inner soul. So, and it's this guy. So there's so much going on here. To me, this is the pinnacle of everything. And it has to do with the new year of Aries. It has to do with all the stuff that we're talking about in the Bible, we're talking about the ram, right? We're talking about Abraham sacrificing Isaac and Ishmael, depending on who's telling the story. And then
Well, for people who don't understand, for people who you have three sons: Abraham, Isaac, and wait, hold on a minute. No, I'm giving you the Jewish Trinity: Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You have Ishmael. This is the difference between the Jews and the Muslims, by the way. Is I can't shit. Who was it? I know Ishmael was the favorite, or he was to be sacrificed. That's in Islam. And
well, yeah,
right. That's how it is. They venerate Ishmael, not Isaac.
Different scholars from different cultures will tell you different things. Some say that it was Ishmael that was going to be sacrificed. That's what Islam says. The West Judaic traditions will say it was Isaac that was going to be sacrificed.
Which, guys, you have to understand, that is the genesis of the division between the Jews and the Muslims, by the way. That is the genesis of it. That is the first disagreement they had.
Yeah, Ishmael was the firstborn. Ishmael was born of Hagar, the slave. He had like a slave that he had the firstborn with. But then he had the secondborn with his actual wife. And so his wife was like, this is no bueno. You got to get the slave out of here. My son is going to get the inheritance. So Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael off with a camel, gave him $100 and said, see you later. And so they went back to the Bedouin. And then their generations kind of evolved. So the legend goes into what we know as Islam, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff with that. Mm-hmm. Islam also has a lot of Hindu roots with the Ramayana, mm-hmm. but long before Muhammad. But anyways, but that story. So Abraham was paying tithing to Melchizedek. Melchizedek was Abraham's high priest, and
Jesus in the New Testament famously says, I'll always be a priest of Melchizedek.
Yeah. So that's really interesting because Melchizedek was a Canaanite high priest. And who was the Canaanite god? It was Melch.
Oh, was it Moloch, right?
Moloch. Yeah, it's MLK, means king.
Right.
I mean,
in Hebrew, Moloch is Canaanite. In Hebrew, the word for king is Melech.
Yeah.
Which is very similar.
So Moloch is just like my king. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about these different eras and how like Satan is really just like this character, but some equivalent with Saturn and Moloch, some equivalent or whatever, Saturn and Moloch. But so here you have Abraham sacrificing his child. That to me, that's like, that looks an awful lot like what a satanic person would be doing. It's like sacrificing his little innocent baby, It's just right. Like, so then whenever you put two and two together with Melchizedek, and then just his name, Moloch I Zedek, which is the Zadok, I guess, translates to Jupiter. So it's actually like Jupiter is like justice, Saturn is like Moloch. So it's like the combination of right. Saturn and Jupiter.
Jupiter is Zeus.
Yeah, justice, right. Zeus. So yeah, we just come from a really crazy human history where people would make sacrifices. So that was, but who is the god of morality or whatever, and what who is Satan and who is God? I mean, if you listen to this Yale professor, Christine, gosh, I want to say her name is Christine Hayes. She will go into how Moloch and Yahweh are really indistinguishable the further you look back into Canaan, where it all comes from. It's all the same God. Just over time, like in I think it's Leviticus. In Leviticus, Moses outlaws child sacrifice, but it's the same. It all comes from the same root. It's a really crazy history, and I think it's very little known by most people. And I'm not here to be red pilling on that. It's just too crazy for me to be talking about, really. But What I was talking about is the ram of the story, because in the story of Abraham sacrificing his child, a little angel whispers in his ear. And that's like, you got Andromeda, and you have Triangulum with Aries, Triangulum the knife. If maybe we could pull
Andromeda
that up.
is a galaxy. Triangulum is one of Ptolemy's 48 constellations. It means triangle.
Yeah, but you have Andromeda is a constellation next to. I mean, there's paintings with Andromeda. You have Andromeda next to Bootes.
Boots, yeah.
I would pull this up on my laptop, but I'm sure it would.
No, it is Boots. And supposedly we're going to collide with Andromeda one day.
Yeah. Well, I'm just bringing up Andromeda as a. I mean, I should have gotten a picture of this, because there's paintings that basically take those constellations and then paint this whole scene of Abraham sacrificing Isaac, but then the angel whispering into his ear, "No, don't do that," or whatever. That's not cool. That's your son, or whatever. Instead, sacrifice this ram. So,
well, that's the idea. The idea is that because of his faith, because of his faith in God, then transferred the sacrifice to atone for him from human sacrifice, where it had always been, to animals.
Yeah. That's that. I've heard that a lot. But I think that there's a deeper story going on with Abraham, Aries, Osiris, because Abraham was in Egypt also, so this is all connected. Osiris was Aries, Osiris. Like that's a very little known, or I would have to do a whole kind of presentation on something like that. But Osiris was this guy, Knom, Bonebjet, the goat of Mendes. I mean, I know that's a goat, but if you look at Mendes and Hatmehet and Bonebjet was the goat of Mendes. Even though it's a ram. I know it's confusing because there's.
Do you have a couple more slides that you wanted to get through? Just because we're about an hour and a half in, and I don't want to make this too long. I would always love to have you back, by the way, and do something else too, because this is a fun conversation.
Yeah, sure. Well, I wanted to talk about Chrysomalis. Very well. Okay, where does the story of Abraham and the ram come from? You have Chrysomalis, the golden fleece ram of Jason, right? The myth of Jason, and you have. So what happened in that story?
The Argonauts?
Yeah, Jason and the Argonauts. But we're talking specifically about the myth of Phrixus, PhrYxus, Phrixus. So the golden ram came. Okay, so apparently Phrixus was going to be sacrificed, but the ram came and saved Phrixus, and his sister fell off into the water. But to me, okay, there's so many parallels between the story of Abraham and the story of Phrixus that I don't see enough discussion about that. I'm curious. I want to know more, but because even with Phrixus's dad and Abraham, and just how they ended up sacrificing. Phrixus was saved by this ram, and then Phrixus sacrificed this ram in the Greek story, right? So that's a lesser known thing, but I think it's super significant, and I hope somebody out there hears it and looks into it. But we're just talking about the Lamb of God. Every time you see the Lamb of God, we're talking about Aries in the zodiac, these symbols.
And for people out there, or religious people who are like, a lamb is not a ram. A lamb is a baby ram. I'm sorry, it is.
Yeah. So that's the 36 slides. I just said this is the start of many mind-bending rabbit holes, and we'll get into procession. There's so much to talk about. Really, it goes forever.
Dude, I would love to have you back on and talk about all this kind of stuff. Maybe off camera and behind the scenes, we can flesh out like a an outline
Yeah.
for part 2 of this. This was wild. I want to get a couple of your last thoughts, though. Maybe you want to tie something together, because we ended up back on astrology, but we touched base on Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell. Hopefully people understand that a little bit better, so that it's not just a punchline when I say Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. I like how you had that slide. Now, when you had the slide of the archetypes, I only counted 9. I think it was 9. I don't think it was all 12. But it was good for people to see.
Yeah.
It's the basis of the movie 13 Ghosts. If any of you guys have ever seen it, the Black Zodiac, the Dark Zodiac, it's kind of an inverted, perverted way of this. But dude, this was absolutely wonderful. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun because it's like kind of like my jam. I don't really usually know anybody I can talk to about this stuff. I'm like, oh, but this stuff is it's like,
Right.
and you have the whole background. This is your jam also. So I always thought that one day we would probably talk about something. I was just thinking, but yeah, great time, man. I'd be happy to come back anytime and talk about whatever, or we could even have a third guest and talk about. I mean, I have a lot of pretty wild stuff to bring up, actually, about some old Sumerian stuff that I've been looking at. It's just super interesting, and it's people can come to their own.
Maybe I'll let you outline it. Whatever you want to come on and talk about, because I kind of guided this conversation towards 2 topics, but I'll definitely have you back on. We'll talk. I love all your hot takes on Twitter. Just tell everyone where they could find you.
Oh yeah, EQ Studies, right here. I'm on Twitter, EQ Studies. It's not like I'm super public, but yeah, feel free to follow me. And yeah, my hot takes. It's funny. I feel like I'm pretty low key, but
You are pretty low key, but you always comment on my shit posts, and I love that.
oh yeah. You're for some reason
I have to shit post because I'll lose my mind if I don't.
For some reason, I only follow like 200 people, but your shit posts come up, and to me, they're gold posts a lot of time. Your hot takes are pretty good. So yeah.
All right, Josh, man, I appreciate you coming on, man. I will obviously talk to you on Twitter. I'm going to put this up right now, so I'll send you the link. Thank you very much, and I will talk to you soon, man.
All right, cool. Have a good one, man.
You too. Take care.